On this episode of Tom Talks, we are going to feature a car that's much newer than cars we featured on our recent episodes. However, it's certainly not less collectible. That car is this fantastic McLaren P1 XP that we currently have in stock. Now, before we talk about the car itself, its chassis highlights, or what XP actually stands for, then let's just run over some bullet points on a McLaren P1 and what makes them so special. So a P1 is powered by a 3.8 litre V8 twin turbocharged engine that's boosted by a hybrid power unit that together produce over 900 brake horsepower. It is constructed around a carbon fibre monocage. It has this very clever and sophisticated brake steer technology that was actually outlawed in racing for providing such a competitive advantage. It has Akabono brakes. It has specially designed Pirelli tyres. It has thinner glass, 3.5 millimeters thick, in order to save weight. It's rear-wheel drive. It does 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.8 seconds, and it does 0 to 185 miles an hour in 16.5 seconds. That's 0 to 185 miles an hour in 16 seconds. And they only produced 375 cars. Now, this particular car is known as XP5, XP standing for Experimental Prototype. Now, there isn't many of the XP cars that still exist, and these are cars that their chassis numbers, that their carbon fibre monocage actually done something. They contributed towards the development of the P1. This particular car was a car that helped with the development of the Bosch injection system, the gearbox, and it was then utilized as the GTR show car at both the Geneva and New York motor shows. But other XP cars are cars that, they went to the Arctic, they went to Arizona, these cars all have a story to tell. It's added in their provenance compared to other P1s that were delivered new to any different part of the world that might have been delivered in a crazy color and just ordered by an individual, but it didn't actually do anything. The XP cars, once they were finished from their factory development, they were sold to very special McLaren clients. The cars were completely stripped back to their carbon fibre monocage, and they were built as new cars to the exact same standard and the exact same development as the last cars off the line. Because obviously throughout the P1 production, the later cars, there were teething problems early on, with the same with any new model that's produced, and that was ironed out in the later production. So these cars were built to the very best specification as new cars. However, the chassis, the monocage, still had significant history, provenance, and because of that, McLaren charged for these cars new £1,250,000 plus VAT, so £1.5 million, compared to an £850,000 normal P1. All the cars were hand chose to which clients would get delivery of them. This particular car went to an important McLaren client, a client who has a matching McLaren F1 in the same colours. He sat down with the guys at the factory and wanted a very special spec P1 on his XP. So he ordered the McLaren Orange. He specified many different options, such as the Alcantara interior, including the inside of the doors, the XP stitched onto the seats, the orange stitching, the heritage Bruce McLaren badge at the rear, the P1 badge in the matching McLaren Orange. He had the heritage badge on the front compared to the normal McLaren tick, as you'll see on most P1s. It was delivered to the UK, where the client resided, and he only used the car for something like 300 miles, which is on it today. We sold this car previously. We sold it in late 2017. We bought it back, as I say, something round about 4, 5, maybe 6 months ago. We bought it particularly well, and because of that, we've priced it at a level that I think is amazingly attractive, because it's £1,350,000, and when you compare the price of this car to a normal P1, it's not much of a premium at all. And those normal P1s, they have no heritage, they have no provenance. All of these XP cars, I think everybody needs to be educated and know more about them. When you speak with McLaren, McLaren kept XP7 for themselves. XP7 is also the car that, well, actually, I know McLaren kept definitely an experimental prototype car for themselves, and I think it was XP7. But XP7 is the car that Chris Harris tested in Abu Dhabi, and I recall watching that, and I think it was Paul Stevenson talked about the significance of the XP cars. These are cars that in the future, my business it's a lot about classic cars. We sell very collectible cars, and if we wind the clock forward 25 years from now, and we just talk about a McLaren P1 in volcano orange or black that was delivered new originally to the Middle East or the Far East or America or wherever, compared to this particular car that has got very significant provenance, chassis provenance, carbon monocage provenance, yet it was built as a brand new car to the highest specification of a P1. It actually shares, why I also love this car so much is the XP5, the very famous McLaren F1, the green car that I think has the registration number K8MCL, the car that broke all the speed records. That car is owned by McLaren today, and guess what? That car is XP5. That's McLaren F1 XP5, and this is McLaren P1 XP5. And in general, a McLaren P1, if you spend some time in one, you'll realize what a special car they are. And these are cars that I think in the future, they will be regarded as a very significant car. I'm not convinced that a McLaren Senna is ever going to be that. I'm pretty certain it won't be. A McLaren Senna is a car that was truly built for the track, where this is a car that is truly built for the road, but is just astonishingly quick around the track. I mean, when you put this car in race mode, the front of the car goes down by 50 mil. You've got the you've got the rear spoiler that goes up by 300 mil. You have the shocks that stiffen by something like 300%. Like, this is a monster of a car on the track. And this is a car that was built by a relatively small yet very successful car company. McLaren obviously is widely regarded that they built easily the greatest supercar of all time in the F1, and maybe the greatest car of all time in the F1. But then they had 20 years out, they came back with the 12C, and then at that time, with the Holy Trinity, with Porsche coming out with the 918 Spider and Ferrari coming with the LaFerrari, McLaren done nothing short but absolutely nail it with their hybrid technology in this car, and just in general, the build quality, the carbon fibre, the little touches, the glass being thinner to save weight, the carbon fibre not being lacquered in many areas to save weight, the quality of the paint finish. The quality of the paint finish, I'm Ferrari through and through. I love Ferrari, probably should be Italian, but the paint finish on a McLaren P1 is easily the best of all the Holy Trinity cars. And in general, I just think they're a car that in the future will be much more loved and maybe much more appreciated and adored than they are today. And because of that, I think today is a fantastic time to be buying one.